You know that moment when something goes wrong and your first instinct isn't who can help me, but okay, I'll just figure this out. Your laptop crashes at midnight, you don't text anyone. You're overwhelmed at work, you stay quiet. You're drowning, but politely, with a smile. And when someone finally asks, "Do you need help?" you say, "No, I'm good," even when you are very much not good. If that feels familiar, yeah, this video might be about you. Or about someone you care about who insists on carrying everything alone, like asking for help is a personal failure instead of a normal human reflex. Because people who rarely ask for help aren't all the same. Some look strong, some look distant, some look fiercely independent. But underneath that habit is a quiet psychology shaped by early experiences, subtle fears, pride, exhaustion, and sometimes a deep misunderstanding of what help even means. Let's talk about what's really going on in the minds of people who almost never ask. There's a certain type of person who learned very early on that help was unreliable. Picture a kid trying to solve problems alone, not because they're brave, but because when they reached out before, no one came, or the help came late, or it came with strings attached, or criticism, or guilt. So they adapted. They stopped asking. As adults, these people don't say, "I don't need help" out loud. They just assume it. They'll Google everything, watch tutorials at 2 a.m., figure it out the hard way, because depending on someone else feels risky. Not dramatic risky, quiet risky. What if you ask and they disappoint you again? What if they help, but then hold it over your head? What if needing someone makes you feel small? So instead, you become competent, self-sufficient, impressive even, the kind of person others lean on. But here's the twist. This isn't true independence. It's protective independence. It's control disguised as strength. And you might not even notice it until someone genuinely offers help, and instead of relief, you feel irritation or discomfort, or a strange urge to say, "I've got it," even when you don't. Maybe this resonates. Maybe you've been proud of being low maintenance, easy, undemanding, but part of you is also tired. Then there's another profile, the person who doesn't ask for help because they don't want to be a burden. You know this type. You might be this type. You're hyper-aware of other people's time, energy, and stress. You notice sighs, tone shifts, pauses. You read rooms like it's a survival skill. So when you struggle, you think they already have enough on their plate, or other people have it worse, or I don't want to bother them. And on the surface, this looks considerate, empathetic, even kind. But psychologically, it often comes from a belief that your needs are negotiable, optional, secondary. Somewhere along the line, you learned that being liked meant being easy, being helpful, being the one who causes no friction. So you handle things quietly, internally, alone. You might even be great at supporting others. You show up, you listen, you offer help without being asked. But when the roles reverse, when it's your turn, you freeze.
Asking feels selfish, exposing, almost embarrassing. And here's the irony. The people who fear being a burden are often the least burdensome humans in the room. They're careful, grateful, thoughtful, yet they deny themselves the very connection they offer so freely. Then there's the achiever who rarely asks for help, not because they don't trust others, but because their identity is built on competence. This is the person who prides themselves on handling things, being capable, being the one who has it together. They don't say, "I don't need help." They say, "I should be able to handle this." Notice the word should. Psychologically, this is about self-worth being tied to performance. If you ask for help, it feels like evidence that you're not as smart, strong, or capable as you thought. So you push through. You overfunction, you stay late, you over-prepare, you double-check everything. And when things go well, you feel relief, but not peace. Because the pressure never really leaves. There's always the next thing you'll have to prove you can handle alone. What's tricky about this type is that asking for help feels like regression, like losing status, like falling off a pedestal you didn't even realize you built for yourself. But here's the quiet cost. You never get to rest in being supported. You're always performing competence, even in relationships. And deep down, that's exhausting. Another profile is more subtle. The emotionally guarded helper. This person might ask for practical help sometimes. Can you send that file? Can you pick me up? But emotional help? That's a different story. They don't talk about how overwhelmed they feel, or how lonely, or how unsure. Why? Because asking for emotional help requires vulnerability without a clear outcome. You can't predict how someone will respond. You can't control the narrative. So instead, you intellectualize. You joke. You change the subject. You become the listener, not the sharer. You might tell yourself you're just private or self-contained. But psychologically, there's often a fear of being misunderstood, or worse, minimized. What if you open up and they say, "That's not a big deal"? What if they try to fix you instead of hearing you? What if they see you differently afterward? So you keep your inner world locked down, not because you don't feel deeply, but because you feel too deeply to risk mishandling. And then there's the last type, the one who doesn't ask for help because they've confused independence with isolation. This is the person who values autonomy above all else, freedom, self-direction, not owing anyone anything. They don't like feeling indebted. They don't like relying on others. They don't like the subtle power shifts that come with receiving help. So they design their life to minimize dependence. They handle things solo. They keep relationships light. They avoid situations where they might need support. On the outside, this looks like strength. On the inside, it can slowly turn into loneliness without them noticing right away. Because humans aren't meant to be completely self-sufficient. We're wired for exchange, for mutual support, for shared weight. When you cut yourself off from help entirely, you don't just avoid vulnerability, you also avoid intimacy. And over time, that can make life feel strangely flat, controlled, safe, but a little empty. Here's the part that often gets missed. People who rarely ask for help aren't broken, they're adapted. At some point, not asking for help worked. It kept you safe, respected, in control, unhurt. The problem isn't that you don't ask for help, it's that you might not realize you're allowed to need, allowed to lean, allowed to receive without earning it. And here's a quiet reframe that tends to land slowly, but deeply. Asking for help isn't a subtraction from your strength. It's a redistribution of weight. It doesn't make you less capable. It makes you human, with a nervous system that wasn't designed to do everything alone. You don't have to swing to the other extreme. You don't have to overshare or depend on everyone. Sometimes asking for help is as small as saying, "Can I think out loud with you for a minute?" Or, "I'm not okay, but I don't need fixing, just company." Or, "This is harder than I expected." Those moments don't collapse your independence, they deepen your connections. So let me ask you, gently, which of these felt familiar? The self-reliant one who learned not to expect support? The considerate one who doesn't want to be a burden? The achiever who equates help with failure? The guarded one who protects their inner world? Or the fiercely independent one who values autonomy above closeness? Maybe it's a mix. Maybe it shifts depending on the situation. If this landed somewhere personal, take a second with it. You don't need to change anything today. Awareness alone is already movement. And if you want to explore more of these quiet patterns, the ones that don't look dramatic but shape entire lives, you know where to find this channel. So tell me, if you want, when was the last time you needed help but didn't ask?